At 9:55 in the morning, VIASA's DC-9 began approaching the runway at the small Grano de Oro airport. But just seconds before landing, something unexpected happened. Flight 742 had brushed against some nearby trees. Once the plane stopped, the pilots decided it was best to have the aircraft inspected before continuing to Miami. Sunday, March 16, 1969. Grano de Oro Airport, Maracaibo, Venezuela. It's 10:15 in the morning, and just a few minutes ago, VIASA Flight 742 landed here at Grano de Oro Airport. This flight, coming from Maiquetía, is making a stopover here, where 27 passengers will join the 47 already on board for the final leg to Miami International Airport in the United States. Along with the passengers are 10 crew members, including the 2 pilots. In total, there are 84 people on board. The flight was originally commanded by Captain Gibson, accompanied by Emiliano Savelli Maldonado. Captain Gibson will not continue the journey and will be replaced by another pilot who will join Captain Maldonado. During the landing, there was a minor incident. As the plane touched down, it grazed some trees near the runway threshold. It seems like just a few scratches, but the airport personnel have been asked to inspect in case there's any damage that could compromise safety on the next leg to Miami. The aircraft is a DC-932 purchased from McDonnell Douglas just 15 days ago by Avensa, leased to VIASA for today's flight along with the crew. VIASA was a Venezuelan airline founded by the government on November 21, 1960. It became a mixed company where 49% of shares were privately owned and the remaining 51% belonged to the state. In the 1960s, its fleet, one of the most modern in South America, was composed of Convair 880s, DC-9s, and DC-8s. In the 1970s, it included Boeing 747s and DC-10s, and in the 1980s, DC-10s and Airbus A300s. VIASA was internationally known for having the most planes and destinations in the Americas and for its excellent customer service. Maracaibo has been constructing a new airport for over 5 years, El Caujarito, meant to replace Grano de Oro Airport. The Grano de Oro Airport is surrounded by residential areas, making runway expansions impossible and preventing larger modern aircraft from using the airport. Its only active runway, one of the 4 it originally had, is 2 kilometers long, suitable for propeller and turboprop planes but quite short for jet aircraft. Despite this, planes like the DC-915 and Boeing 727-100 take off from here daily. The challenge for these planes increases on hotter days, as the warmer air reduces its density, making the already short runway even more challenging for this type of aircraft. Commanding Flight 742 is Captain Emiliano Savelli Maldonado, also Avensa's head of operations, with 25 years of experience and more than 28,000 flight hours. Beside him is First Officer José Gregorio Rodríguez Silva. At 11:45 in the morning, considerably delayed from its scheduled departure time, VIASA's DC-9 began taxiing toward the runway. While the aircraft waited for the ground crew to finish checking its condition, the captain decided to top off the fuel tanks. Inexplicably, instead of reaching the taxiway that would have led them to the beginning of the runway, they took an earlier exit, losing 400 meters of the already short takeoff runway. VIASA 742 ready on runway 4R, requesting permission for takeoff. VIASA 742, cleared for takeoff. Safe journey. The controller who granted the takeoff clearance couldn't see the DC-9's position from her location. Following this, the captain pushed the engines to full throttle, and VIASA's DC-9 started rolling down the runway. The plane began gaining speed, but the pilots, stunned, watched as the runway's end approached faster than expected. They kept glancing at the airspeed indicator as the runway ran out. V1. 30 meters of runway. 20. VR. Now! With only 10 meters remaining, the captain pulled back hard on the controls. But relief lasted only a few seconds. The aircraft wasn't gaining altitude as quickly as they had hoped. Upon leaving the runway, they immediately entered an urban area, and at very low altitude. Suddenly, an initial impact. The left wing struck a light pole on a basketball court, snapping it in half instantly. The plane, seemingly intact, began tilting left. Additionally, the left fuel tank had been damaged in the impact and was leaking fuel. Several alarms started sounding in the cockpit. With the plane out of control, there was another impact. This time the left engine collided with a high voltage power tower filled with transformers. The hit was so severe that the engine caught fire and broke off, falling onto a nearby house. Fuel was spilling in large quantities, and part of the plane was fully engulfed in flames, crashing with no chance of recovery. The VIASA DC-9 finally crashed into an area densely packed with homes and parks in the neighborhoods of Ziruma and Trinidad. No one on board the DC-9 survived the impact and flames. Additionally, 71 others died in the inferno caused by Flight 742's crash on the ground. "155 fatalities and more than 100 injuries made this tragic flight the deadliest aviation accident in history until 2 years later. In 1971, when Nippon Airways Flight 58 suffered a mid-air collision. What went wrong? Was it the captain's mistake, or was there a problem with the aircraft? Even without the internet, mobile phones or modern technology, news of the accident spread worldwide in hours. Within 24 hours, La Trinidad was full of international radio, press and television reporters. This tragedy affected Venezuelan society so profoundly that it sped up the construction of La Chinita Airport in Caujarito, which opened just 8 months after the accident. As for Grano de Oro, a pilot's strike shortly after the crash was the final nail in the airport's coffin, leading to its permanent closure. For years the site was abandoned, though its runways were used by model airplane enthusiasts who founded the Grano de Oro Model Airplane Club. Later, the land was ceded to the University of Zulia, which, in 1973, converted the former Art Deco terminal into its experimental science faculty building. When Captain Savelli took command of the DC-9, which had previously brushed against some trees during the Maracaibo landing, he ordered the tanks filled with around 28,000 pounds of fuel, or about 12,700 kilograms, while it was being inspected. Thus, the aircraft was near its maximum weight. If we add to this the already excessively short runway for this type of plane, the midday heat, and the pilot's confusion when entering the runway, it resulted in Flight 742 not having enough runway to take off. They managed to take off, but being so heavy and close to the urban area next to the airport, they couldn't avoid the first obstacles encountered at low altitude. The air traffic controller also failed to verify the aircraft's correct position before clearing the takeoff. Soon after, it was revealed that Captain Harry Gibson, who landed in Maracaibo, left the plane because he refused to take off in a DC-932 loaded with fuel on this runway. This last-minute crew change contributed to the accident. The investigation also showed that the intense heat seriously affected several sensors on the plane, resulting in faulty readings during the takeoff roll, which may have confused the pilots. The accident's cause was attributed, aside from these faulty sensors, to runway and takeoff calculations based on incorrect information, leading to the aircraft being over 5,000 pounds, about 2,267 kilograms, overweight for the conditions at the time. Just 2 days after the accident, Venezuela's Minister of Public Works cited the runway length as a contributing factor to the disaster. Among the passengers were baseball players Nestor Látigo Chávez and Carlos Santelis, along with the owner of the Cardenales de Lara team, Antonio Herrera Gutiérrez. During the explosion, the plane's left engine fell onto the home of Zulian athlete Lino Connell, killing his wife, his father-in-law, and 3 of his children,